Hi, this is Simona Netherlands at the Respect for Horses barn, full of rescued horses, giving you a little bit more information on what's happening on the subject of horse slaughter today. In Congress, the Safeguard American Food Export Act has been sponsored by Senators Mary Landrieu and Lindsey Graham and Representatives Patrick Meehan and Jan Schakowsky. It is Senate Bill S-541 and House Bill H.R. 1094. This bill will not only protect our American horses from slaughter, it will also protect American citizens and foreign countries alike from a serious food safety risk. Horses in America are not bred nor intended for slaughter. Therefore, pretty much any horse owner knows these simple medications, which, like this one, it's phenylbutazone, and it is like aspirin for horses. Any horse owner knows that if your horse is in any kind of pain, this is the thing to give it. For example, dewormer. Any horse owner knows that you need to deworm a horse or he will get worms. It simply says not for use in horses for human consumption. The fact of the matter is that in America we do not breed and we do not intend horses for slaughter. And because of this fact, every single horse in the racing industry and most every single horse owned by private owners has at one point in their life received any one of these medications, and there is over 130 of these substances that are actually banned for food safety purposes. So it's a serious food safety issue, besides for the horse welfare issue, and besides for the issue that it's about your tax dollars that are funding this unspeakable cruelty to our American horses.
Do we need horse slaughter in America?
That's what they would like us to believe. They would like us to believe that horse slaughter is a service-oriented business that will help us get rid of old and decrepit and sick horses. This is not the case. Horse slaughter, just like any other business, is a for-profit, demand-driven business. And 92% of all horses slaughtered, according to the USDA, are perfectly healthy and in the prime of their life. The amount of horses slaughtered is determined by the demand of horse meat abroad, not by any amount of unwanted horses. You can make a difference for horses today. Call the Capitol Switchboard operator at 202-224-3121. If you tell them where you're from, they can tell you who your legislators are, and they will connect you with them. When they answer, ask for the legislative aide who deals with horse slaughter. Politely let him or her know that you are a constituent and that you want your legislator to co-sponsor the SAFE Act, the Safeguard American Food Exports Act, which is S-541 in the Senate and H.R. 1094 in the House. Give them the 5 reasons why we need to pass the SAFE Act now. Carcinogenic horse meat will not become a public health risk. Taxpayers won't have to foot the bill for a foreign industry. Horse breeders will have to breed more responsibly. Horse owners will not have to fear kill buyers anymore. And it will effectively end the brutal torture and immense suffering of over 150,000 of our American horses.
What about abused and neglected horses?
The simple fact that we have abused and neglected horses means that those horses did not end up in horse slaughter. Their owners chose to abuse and neglect them instead of sending them to slaughter. Horse slaughter is available at every auction in the country. These people hung on to their horses, perhaps despite their ability to take care of them, because they did not want to see them end up in slaughter. Therefore, horse slaughter will never be a solution for this demographic of horses.
Can there ever be a passport or traceability system?
Well, you can trace it all you want, but it's going to be based on fraud and lies, because the fact remains that horses in America have received substances that are banned for human consumption because they were never intended for slaughter. So you can trace it, but you're going to find out that they've received the substances, then you're going to have to lie about it, and then you're going to have to trace that, and that's what they're going to be trying to do. But it will only be based on fraud and lies. Respect for Horses and our sister organizations are asking for horse breed associations to take more responsibility. Instead of encouraging the breeding of horses, please discourage the breeding of all horses right now until the market stabilizes itself again. Turn those breed incentives into funds for horse rescues, into funds for gelding clinics, into funds for humane euthanasia. All we need is a little bit of a different attitude towards horses today. They are not a disposable product. After all, horses have literally brought us and carried us from the past into this day and age. They have gone the distance for us. They have plowed our fields and they have fought our battles. Let's all have a little more respect for horses.
My eyes are open, my heart is true, my words unspoken are all for you. My hope is brave, our bond is strong.
Hello. My name is Montague William III. And what I will tell you may well sound absurd, but the less who believe it, the better for me. For you see, I'm in banking and a big industry. For many a year we have controlled your lives, while you all just struggle and suffer in strife. We created the things that you don't really need, your sports cars and fashions and plasma TVs. I remember it clearly how all this begun. Family secrets from father to son, inherited knowledge that gives me the edge, while you people lie sleeping at night in your beds. We control the money that controls your lives, whilst you worship false idols and wouldn't think twice about selling your souls for a place in the sun. These things that won't matter when your time is done. But as long as they're there to control the masses, I just sit back and consider my assets, safe in the knowledge that I have it all, while you common people are losing your jobs. You see, I just hold you in utter contempt. But the smile on my face, well, it makes me exempt. For I have the weapon of global TV, which gives us connection and invites empathy. You would really believe that we look out for you, while we bankers and brokers are only a few. But if you saw that, you'd take back the power. Hence, daily terrors to make you all cower. The panics, the crashes, the wars, and the illness that keep you from finding your spiritual wholeness. We rig the game, and we buy out both sides to keep you enslaved in your pitiful lives. So, go out and work as your body clock fades. And when it's all over, a few years from the grave, you'll look back on all this, and just then you'll see that your life was nothing, a mere fantasy. There are very few things that we don't now control. To have lawyers and police force was always a goal, doing our bidding while you march on the street. But they never realize that they're only just sheep. For real power resides in the hands of a few. You voted for parties. What more could you do? But what you don't know is they're one and the same. Old Gordon has passed good old David the reins, and you'll follow the leader who was put there by you. But your blood, it runs red, while our blood runs blue. But you simply don't see it's all part of the game. Another distraction, like money and fame. Get ready for wars in the name of the free, vaccinations for illness that will never be, the assault on your children's impressionable minds, and a microchipped world. You'll put up no fight. Information suppression will keep you in tone. Depopulation of peasants was always our goal. But eugenics was not what we hoped it would be. Oh yes, it was us that funded Nazis. But as long as we own all the media too, what's really happening does not concern you. So just go on watching your plasma TV, and the world will be run by the ones you can't see.
He is a real-life Cyberman, a scientist with an implanted computer chip. A tiny lump is all that gives it away. A wave of his digitally enhanced hand and security doors magically open. Only he can operate his phone, and only if he holds it in the hand fitted with a chip. But now Dr. Mark Gasson is suffering a very 21st century malady, the first human to be infected with a computer virus.
When the systems read my tags, the computer virus has actually appeared throughout the whole database. So it's actually replicated itself and copied it throughout the database. So any of these people that are using their swipe cards to access the building, the actual virus will be copied onto their card.
The cybernetics expert at the University of Reading had the chip implanted in a minor operation. In future, your medical records could be stored like this, but the chips are vulnerable. This is just like the chip that's implanted in Dr. Gasson's hand. It's called an RFID, a tag that's been used for many years to track goods around the world. But these days they're far more powerful, and they're being used in more and more applications. They're like mini computers, and just like a computer, they're vulnerable to viruses. Already, many implanted medical devices like heart pacemakers have on-board computers that communicate with doctors. If they're corrupted by a virus, the consequences for patients could be fatal. And in future, chips will be used even more widely, perhaps even as memory upgrades for the brain. They too could be scrambled by malicious computer code.
These type of devices are going to have to start to use secure encrypted communication. The medical devices really should have some sort of password protection as well. I mean, it's very basic security precautions, which surprisingly these devices don't have at the moment.
Our bodies have been fighting biological viruses for millions of years, but as man and machine merge, so computer viruses could prove a new threat to human health. Thomas Moore, Sky News.
Imagine an emergency room where a doctor could scan a critically ill patient in an instant and know his or her entire medical history. It's an idea that could save lives, also could get under your skin. Welcome to the future. Like 2 million other Americans, Denise is an epileptic. When a seizure strikes suddenly, the doctors in the ER need answers, and fast. Now imagine a device that could tell them all they need to know about any medical condition you have in a matter of minutes, at any hospital, anywhere in the world. Sound far-fetched? It's closer than you think.
On a typical day, patients come in with heart attacks, strokes, major trauma, with cancer patients and septic shock. You name it, we have it.
What might improve the odds for some of those patients at New Jersey's Hackensack University Medical Center is this. That tiny chip Dr. Joseph Feldman, head of the hospital's trauma unit, holds in his hand. It's a radio frequency identification, or RFID tag.
This is a man-made motor, a motor so small that more than 6,000 of them would fit on the head of a pin. Welcome to the world of the nanometer, a unit of measure that is 1/billionth of a meter.
A nanometer is pretty small. One of the best analogies that I like to use is to compare it with a human hair. If you take a hair off of the top of your head, you can see that it's very thin. And now if you take something that's 100,000 times thinner than that, that's a nanometer.
The ability to observe and construct things this small is at the heart of nanotechnology.
This compromise guarantees more than $2 trillion in deficit reduction. It's an important first step to ensuring that as a nation we live within our means. Yet it also allows us to keep making key investments in things like education and research that lead to new jobs, and assures that we're not cutting too abruptly while the economy is still fragile. This is, however, just the first step. This compromise requires that both parties work together on a larger plan to cut the deficit, which is important for the long-term health of our economy. And since you can't close the deficit with just spending cuts, we'll need a balanced approach where everything's on the table. Yes, that means making some adjustments to protect health care programs like Medicare so they're there for future generations. It also means reforming our tax code so that the wealthiest Americans and biggest corporations pay their fair share. And it means getting rid of taxpayer subsidies to oil and gas companies and tax loopholes that help billionaires pay a lower tax rate than teachers and nurses. I've said it before, I will say it again. We can't balance the budget on the backs of the very people who have borne the biggest brunt of this recession. Everyone's going to have to chip in. In the last few months, the economy's already had to absorb an earthquake in Japan, the economic headwinds coming from Europe, the Arab Spring and the rise in oil prices, all of which have been very challenging for the recovery. But these are things we couldn't control.
With astonishing dexterity, a monkey reaches out to grab and turn a handle with a robotic arm controlled not by its hands, but directly by its brain. With the power of thought, it can alter the speed and direction of the arm, twisting the joints to home in on its target. It shows no signs of distress from the wires leading from electrodes in its brain to a computer. Sky News was given exclusive access to the lab at the University of Pittsburgh to see just how close scientists are to helping paralyzed patients. Human trials are likely to start next year.
And it's very small, and it doesn't bother you at all, but it certainly is going to allow you to identify who you are, protect your child. If you have a new child that's born in a nursery, you can protect that child from having somebody walk off on it. You can also protect your loved ones in a nursing home so that you can put a bracelet on and identify that individual and be able to find that individual if that person wanders away. But I certainly would, and I think it's a coming thing. And the problem is that medical technology is so far behind that RFIDs are the impetus in order for us to get new technology in the medical field that's going to help people improve their quality of care. And that's what it's all about.
And I'm sorry, sir, did you just say you would get one implanted in your arm?
Absolutely, without a doubt.
I have to admit, it makes me a little queasy, makes me worry. What happens if it gets dislodged? Am I being irrational?
No, but just think of this. Now, if you were, wherever you are, if you're traveling, you're in New Jersey now and you're interviewing me in Washington. Washington, D.C.
Right.
Can you imagine if you were in Washington, D.C. and had an accident or had a stroke and went into the hospital, how long would it be before your records could get down here? How long would it take to be able to find out what sort of meds you're on or what allergies you have or what are you allergic to? And the problem is that technology is so far behind in the medical field that people are dying every day because of the lack of technology. The 98,000 people died last year because of mistakes in hospitals and clinics across America. And a good share of those mistakes could have been prevented by technology. RFID is at the cutting edge of new technology, is going to help to improve the quality of health and the quality of care for all Americans.
Lots of care for the people that were disadvantaged. I'm now a kindergarten teacher, so I'll be nice.
You don't have to be.
I wanted to ask you, friends of ours that live in France have a medical card, and there is a chip on it that has all of their medical information from birth to whatever age they are. That scared me, frankly, because I said to them, well, how do you want the government knowing all of your business from cradle to grave? I believe our country was founded on independence, and I think we can all agree on this, whether you're Democrat or Republican. I think it's important that we have privacy between our doctor and our health records, and it shouldn't be shared with the government.
Governor Dean?
And if you could tell me under what moral jurisdiction the Constitution allows you to do that.
First of all, since this is the last one, let me thank all of you on both sides. I happen to think, I think everybody actually behaved pretty well. This is kind of a spirited American tradition, and I appreciate it, and I thank you very, very much, all of you. Secondly, the interesting thing about this is one of the biggest problems in medicine was just raised in the last question. It's sort of like the psychiatry patient asking the really tough one on their way out the door so nobody can deal with it. This is a huge issue, and it's much more than about just this health care bill, because this isn't just about health care. You don't want the government knowing all your health information. You're not so crazy about having the insurance industry or your bank knowing all your information either, which then gets sent to all these credit card companies, and that's why you get all this junk mail. So this is a much bigger issue than health care, and health care is a pretty big issue. Here's what folks are struggling with, and I don't think this is one's cooked, and I'm going to give, of course, Jim the last word, but we want to have records that are complete, and patients get cared for better if the doctor who's taking care of them know that it's complete. And so the president put in a lot of money in the stimulus package to advance medical records, so that if you get sick in some place that's 1,000 miles from your home, you can get, if you have the chip, you can carry the records with you. They can stick it in a computer. They can know all your situations. If you get been in a terrible car accident and you can't tell them anything, you have that. The doctor has the information. They know if you're on some kind of medication, etc. That's important. So what guards are there against the privacy? And the guards are a bill that was passed about 6 or 8 years ago called HIPAA, which stands for God knows what, but it has something to do with health insurance and privacy. The problem is it's not enough. And there is no way it's enough. And this is a private sector problem as well as a government problem. Look, just the other day, there was some guy hacked into some credit card companies and stole 130 million credit card numbers. Those are our credit card information that's now in some crook's hands. So there is no really good answer to this, because in this information age, there's going to be, and there already is, more information available than most of us, at least in my generation, didn't grow up on Facebook, would ever be comfortable in having in other people's hands. On the other hand, the more information that your healthcare professionals have, the better it is. So the key is, how are we, and this is an open question, because I don't think anybody knows the right answer to this. How are we going to build a wall between particularly the government, but also corporate America and ourselves, so that our private information stays private. But there are people who need to know our private information, and one of them is the healthcare professional that's taking care of us. So this is a great question, unfortunately, for which there is no perfect answer. So I'm sorry to leave on that kind of a note. Let me thank you again. I've actually enjoyed this, and I hope Jim has too.
The last thing the men behind the curtain want is a conscious, informed public capable of critical thinking, which is why a continually fraudulent zeitgeist is output via religion, the mass media, and the educational system. They seek to keep you in a distracted, naive bubble, and they are doing a damn good job of it. In 2005, an arrangement between Canada, Mexico, and the United States was made. This arrangement, unannounced to the public, unregulated by Congress, merges the United States, Mexico, and Canada into one entity, erasing all borders. It's called the North American Union, and you might want to ask yourself why you've never heard of this. In fact, there is only one mainstream reporter who's actually heard of and has had the courage to cover this issue.
The Bush administration's open borders policy and its decision to ignore the enforcement of this country's immigration laws is part of a broader agenda. President Bush signed a formal agreement that will end the United States as we know it, and he took the step without approval from either the U.S. Congress or the people of the United States.
It's a deal that few have even heard of.
It's being done again by very few people at the very top on behalf of the investment class, but the working class of people. Political officials across our country, from communities, from cities and so forth, they don't know anything about this.
This isn't some trade agreement. It is a total removal of sovereignty from these countries, which will also result in a completely new currency called the Amero.
Fall. Apart from that, I think one thing people who are dollar-based need to focus on is the Amero. That's the one thing that nobody's talking about that I think is going to have a big impact on everybody's life in Canada, the U.S., and Mexico. The Amero is the proposed new currency for the North American community, which is being developed right now between Canada, the U.S., and Mexico to make a borderless community, much like the EU, and the dollar, Canadian dollar, U.S. dollar, and the Mexican peso replaced by the Amero.
By default of this agreement, the American Constitution will eventually be obsolete. You would think that a situation like this would be on the cover of every major newspaper. That is until you realize that the people who are behind this movement are the same people behind the mainstream media, and you are not told what you're not supposed to know. The North American Union is the same concept as the European Union, the African Union, and the soon-to-be Asian Union, and the same people are behind all of them. And, when the time is right, the North American Union, the European Union, the African Union, and the Asian Union will be merged together, forming the final stages of a plan these men have been working on for over 60 years. A one-world government. One bank, one army, one center of power. And if we have learned anything from history, it is that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. This is Aaron Russo, a filmmaker and former politician. To his left is Nicholas Rockefeller of the infamous Rockefeller banking and business dynasty. After maintaining a close friendship with Nicholas Rockefeller, Aaron eventually ended the relationship, appalled by what he had learned about the Rockefellers and their ambitions.
I got a call one day from an attorney woman I knew, and she said, "Would you like to meet one of the Rockefellers?" I said, "Sure, I'd love to." And we became friends, and began to divulge a lot of things to me. So he said to me one night, he said that there's going to be an event there, and out of that event, you're going to see we're going to go into Afghanistan, so we can run pipelines from the Caspian Sea. We're going to go into Iraq to take the oil and establish a base in the Middle East, and we're going to go into Venezuela and try and get rid of Chavez. And the first two they've accomplished. Chavez they didn't accomplish. And he said you're going to see guys going into caves looking for people that they're never going to find. You know, he was laughing about the fact that you have this war on terror. There's no real enemy. He's talking about how by having this war on terror, you can never win it because it's an eternal war, and so you can always keep taking people's liberties away. And I said, how are you going to convince people that this war is real? He said, but the media can convince everybody it's real. I mean, you know, it's just that you keep talking about things, you keep saying it over and over and over again, and eventually people believe it. You know, you created the Federal Reserve in 1913 through lies. You create 9/11, which is another lie. Through 9/11, then you're fighting a war on terror, and now all of a sudden you go into Iraq, which was another lie, and now they're going to do Iran. You know, and it's all one thing leading to another, leading to another, leading to another. Now, I would say that, what are you doing this for? What's the point of this thing? You have all the money in the world you ever want. You have all the power. I said, you know, you're hurting people. It's not a good thing. And he would say, what do you care about the people for? Take care of yourself and take care of your family. And then I said, so what are the ultimate goals here? So the ultimate goal is to get everybody in this world chipped with the RFID chip, and have all money be on those chips and everything on those chips. And if anybody wants to protest what we do or violate what we want, we just turn off their chip.
That's right, microchipped. In 2005, Congress, under the pretense of immigration control and the so-called war on terrorism, passed the REAL ID Act, under which it is projected by May 2008, you will be required to carry around a federal identification card, which includes on it a scannable barcode with your personal information. However, this barcode is only an intermediary step before the card is equipped with a VeriChip RFID tracking module, which will use radio frequencies to track your every move on the planet. If this sounds foreign to you, please note that the RFID tracking chip is already in all new American passports. And the final step is the implanted chip, which many people have already been manipulated into accepting under different pretenses.
We have a Florida family who are really pioneers of the brave new world. They have volunteered to be the first ever to have microchip identification devices implanted into their body.
After 9/11, I was really concerned with the security of my family.
I wouldn't mind having something planted permanently in my arm that would identify me.
In the end, everybody will be locked into a monitored control grid where every single action you perform is documented. And if you get out of line, they can just turn off your chip, for at that point in time, every single aspect of society will revolve around interactions with the chips. This is the picture that is painted for the future if you open your eyes to see it. A centralized one-world economy where everyone's moves and everyone's transactions are tracked and monitored, all rights removed. The most incredible aspect of all. These totalitarian elements will not be forced upon the people. Social manipulation of society through the generation of fear and division has completely detached humans from their sense of power and reality. A process which has been going on for centuries, if not millennia. Religion, patriotism, race, wealth, class, and every other form of arbitrary, separatist identification, thus conceit, has served to create a controlled population, utterly malleable in the hands of the few. Divide and conquer is the motto, and as long as people continue to see themselves as separate from everything else, they lend themselves to being completely enslaved. The men behind the curtain know this, and they also know that if people ever realize the truth of their relationship to nature and the truth of their personal power, the entire manufactured zeitgeist they prey upon will collapse like a house of cards.
Science fiction became reality today. The Food and Drug Administration approved a computer chip that's implanted into people.
You've seen it before, right out of Hollywood.
It's maybe a little uncomfortable.
a microchip inside the body, a hidden high-tech identification tag.
Finally from us this evening, technology on the cutting edge. We were interested today to hear that more than 100 law enforcement officials in Mexico are having microchips implanted in their arms. The chips allow a person to be scanned, sort of like a cereal box at the supermarket checkout.
The microchip, the size of a grain of rice, is injected under the skin and gives off a low-frequency radio wave. A scanner reads each chip's identification number.
The ultimate goal that these people have in mind is the goal to create a one-world government run by the banking industry, run by the bankers, and they're doing it in sections. The European currency, the euro, and the European Constitution is one part of it. Now they're trying to do it in America with the North American Union, right? And they want to create a new currency called the Amero, right? And the whole agenda is to create a one-world government where everybody has an RFID chip implanted in them. All money is to be in those chips, right? There'll be no more cash. And this is giving me straight from Rockefeller himself. This is what they want to accomplish. And all money will be in your chips. And so instead of having cash, anytime you have money in your chip, they can take out whatever they want to take out whenever they want to. If they say you owe us this much money in taxes, they just deduct it out of your chip digitally. Total control. Total control. And if you're like me or you, and you're protesting what they're doing, you can just turn off your chip. And you have nothing. You can't buy food. You can't do anything. It's total control of the people.
And that chip's connected to a database that has your purchasing records, what you do.
Everything. Everything is in there, you know? And so they want a one-world government controlled by them, everybody being chipped, all your money in those chips, and they control the chips, and they control people, and you become a slave. You become a serf to these people. That's their goal. That's their intention.
Say researchers, is developing an implantable chip with a global positioning system to track people miles away, whether kidnapped or lost, just as cars can now be traced. A kind of LoJack for the body.
Tiny chip can lead to a wealth of information about you. If you had been implanted with the device, a doctor would scan your upper arm and then...
That's the number that would come up when you got scanned.
That number is entered into a computer database.
What's the point of all this? You have all the money in the world you need. You have all the power you need. What's the point? And what's the end goal? And he said the end goal is to get everybody chipped, to control the whole society, to have the bankers, the elite people, you know, the bankers and some governor controlling the world. And I said, do all the people in the Council on Foreign Relations believe this way you do? He said, no. You know, most of them believe they're doing the right thing. A lot of them believe it's better off being socialistic. You know, we have to convince people that that socialism is really capitalism. Because America's becoming a socialist country. It's a communist country today.
Implantable human chips. Supporters hail the technology as a medical marvel, but critics warn that the potential risks are real.
Well, they talked about, for example, electrical hazards. This thing is by no means inert. The way it works is it actually picks up and amplifies ambient electromagnetic energy from the reader devices. And if you have one of these things in your arm and you get within range of a powerful electromagnetic field, it can actually burn you.
Oh, and by the way, it can kill you if you get out of line. A closer look at the who and the why behind this idea.
All right, this next story may sound like something out of, well, a Hollywood thriller. A Saudi inventor has created a killer microchip. It's designed to track terrorists and criminals and, well, you can think of somebody. Not only does it include a GPS device, it also has a lethal dose of cyanide, which can be activated at any time. You get my point? The inventor's bid for a patent has been rejected in Germany. Joining us now this morning to talk about it, Jake Ward, deputy editor of Popular Science. Okay, this is pretty macabre, pretty sinister and nefarious. How exactly would this work?
Well, there's a category of technology that involves GPS tracking systems being shrunk down to the size where you could actually implant it surgically. And we've seen a number of applications for this. This is without question the most sinister version of it that I've certainly heard of. You know, and the notion of tracking criminals is not new, but the notion of killing them remotely, I think, is a whole new thing.
Yeah, and Germany says, look, we're not going to approve this. That's because right. For that very purpose. And apparently, in some of the paperwork in applying for the patent, you know, you could track fugitives from justice, terrorists, illegal immigrants, criminals, political opponents, defectors, and Saudi Arabians who don't return home from pilgrimage. It's a little bit wild.
I agree. I mean, the thing about you know, this kind of patent is Germany has very tight laws about making sure that you're not registering something that really is just a bad idea, a scary idea. And in this case, this guy obviously has some very strong feelings about what it would be used for, but it just seems a little outlandish.
Yeah. Well, terrorist groups might be interested. I'm sure they'd be happy to grant their own form of a patent for that.
Sure.
The bigger world, though, of GPS. Talk to us about how it's being used to, for example, track sex offenders.
Sure. The Washington State Legislature right now is considering the possibility of registering perhaps 100 sex offenders with a GPS chip that's implanted in their shoulder because they found that a few of them have been wearing them on their wrists and then have cut them off, which just defeats the purpose. And so, but the larger world of this technology is actually pretty happy stuff. I mean, there is new technology for tracking Alzheimer's patients, you know, who
may wander away.
Right.
Sure.
Tracking the vital signs of professional athletes from the sideline. You know, there's been a couple of cases in which, you know, football players have collapsed of heat exhaustion, and seeing the early warning signs of that, there's technology that sort of allows you to do that remotely. You know, even something as benign as keeping track of your dog, you know, a radio frequency tag implanted in your pet, the vet, you know, finds a stray, scans it, and finds its rightful owner in an instant.
Yeah. Do you see an explosion of the use of GPS devices? And obviously a lot of people are concerned about an intrusion of privacy.
Absolutely, sure. I mean, I think that there is a trade-off there, and obviously this you know, the inventor who filed for this patent has gone across the line in terms of privacy. But the use of GPS in the future will allow you to, you know, you'll never lose your wallet again. You'll never lose your keys again. It's that kind of stuff where you're going to, you know, you'll be able to beep any object you own, you know, and find it in the house. And so, you know, there's the vicious expression, and then there's the really, really helpful expression that I think we'll see in the future.
You know, I lose socks in the dryer. I don't know how that happens. Maybe that would help me in that regard. Thanks. Jake Ward, deputy editor of Popular Science. Interesting stuff. Thanks very much.
I've got my little buddies microchipped.
Do you really?
Yeah. I do, just in case they get away, and then you bring them and you take them to like the checkout counter at the grocery store, and you scan them, and then they say, I belong to Megan Kelly.
That is very cool, yeah.
Verichip has been approved by the FDA as a Class 2 medical device in order to identify high-risk patients in an emergency situation. It's elective, it's voluntary, and it is certainly critical to the evolution of information technology in healthcare.
Oh, go ahead.
You have one in your arm right now.
That's correct.
Where is it?
It's in the upper right arm. It's a simple injection process, just like getting a shot of penicillin.
Is it painful?
Not at all. They numb the area slightly. You don't feel it. They put a Band-Aid on it. Within 2 days, you don't even know it's there.
And can we, I don't know, did you get a good shot of this, Peter, the chip? I don't know how tight you can get on it, but these are small, and you've got a scanner with you right now.
That's correct.
Right?
This is the passive scanner.
The critics would say, and I listened to it, and I'm trying to figure it out, but they use the "they" word a lot. Is there a vast RFID conspiracy out there that is they would say this is a slippery slope. This is the first thing. This is the way you lull us into a false sense of security. We all get these things, and then the next thing you know, I don't know, it's
making Soylent Green.
Like the Trilateral Commission, or the whole world gets taken over, like in Terminator 3 or something. Is anything? I mean, do we need to worry?
There's no conspiracy, Joe.
You sure?
I'm sure.
I'm looking at you. I saw your eyebrow. It twitches when you say that a little bit.
And I'm looking back at you. Let me say this. As far as the RFID industry is concerned.
Can a microscopic tag be implanted in a person's body to track his every movement? There's actual discussion about that. You will rule on that, mark my words, before your tenure is over. Can brain scans be used to determine whether a person is inclined toward criminality or violent behavior? You will rule on that.
Finding from us this evening, technology on the cutting edge. We were interested today to hear that more than 100 law enforcement officials in Mexico are having microchips implanted in their arms. The chips allow a person to be scanned, sort of like a cereal box at the supermarket checkout. In Mexico, this will be one more tool in the fight against crime. Here's ABC's John McKenzie.
A microchip inside the body. A hidden, high-tech identification tag.
The access codes to your job spot.
Now, Mexico's Attorney General and 160 of his deputies have had microchips implanted in their arms to control access to the country's new criminal investigation center.
More now of our special coverage here tonight, life in the U.S. in 10 years' time. By that time, there may be all kinds of new ways to safeguard and identify all those things that make each of us unique, our faces, even our fingerprints, even our eyes. Here now with more on the future of technology, NBC's Tom Costello.
The year is 2017. You're rushed to a hospital unconscious with no ID or medical history, but thanks to a microchip under your skin, it's all there. Science fiction 20 years ago, but a biometric reality today. Researchers predict big changes for consumers.
I think it is possible to free us completely of our wallets and keys using biometric technology, if that's what people want in 10 years' time.
In fact, it's already here. The latest home security locks use fingerprints to control deadbolts. And at the Jewel Osco grocery store in Chicago, some customers pay using their fingerprints. No paper or plastic.
You don't really need anything other than your hand, and you already got that with you.
So will future department stores scan our irises, like in the movie Minority Report, then offer products catered to who we are?
Hello, Mr. Yakamoto. Welcome back to the gas.
Experts say that technology is here now. The challenge is to safeguard our privacy in a brave new world.
Those to yourself. Are you forgetful about taking your medications? A new microchip is being developed to help doctors tell if you've taken your pills and see how they're working or if they're not working. It has digital sensors that work by activating this electric charge when the drugs are digested by your stomach, and then the date and time is recorded and can also measure your heart rate and breathing patterns. Pretty cool, huh? Well, the info is transmitted to the patient and doctor's cell phones, and this, of course, would be useful for psychiatric and elderly patients, or even as a reminder for women taking the birth control pill. Two major drug companies are considering this microchip, still in early stages of development.
In medical news tonight, a chip the size of a grain of rice could save your life.
7's on call with Dr. Jay Adlersberg. Jay?
Shade, Diana, what happens if you're in a bad accident and can't communicate with emergency workers and doctors? New microchip technology now makes it possible for the emergency room staff to find out about your medical history at the touch of a computer key.
In an
an emergency room, a split-second decision can mean the difference between life and death.
So many emergency physicians have to operate blind. We have to make medical decisions not knowing what medicines you take or what allergies you have.
Hi, Dr. Maka. We're going to check your scan today, okay?
Harvard Dr. John Hawapka says this radio frequency identification chip may solve that problem. He had it implanted in his right upper arm.
Cash to pay for all these transactions, or we have to whip out our bank card and use the chip and PIN. What would you say if you could pay for all these things by simply touching a card to a reader? From September, major banks, including HSBC and Halifax, will be issuing bank cards which allow you to do that. Will your pennies be quite as safe as if they were in your pocket? Well, Ron Del Novo is Managing Director of Bank Machine. He joins me now. Ron, just explain how this would work. Would it actually come from, would it be a top-up system, or would it actually come straight out of your account?
No, it would be a reissue of all debit cards in the country, basically. There are about 70 million debit cards, and all of them would be reissued with this facility.
But there would be some kind of limit on how much you could spend on each transaction?
Well, to start with, they're talking about £10, but already there are financial services conferences taking place where they're debating can this be increased to perhaps £75 without the use of a PIN.
Now, it's obviously a security problem. A security problem? Is there a problem?
Well, it's a little bizarre, isn't it? Because the banks have spent years convincing us that we had to stop just handing our credit card over and signing, that it was desperately necessary.
Now, when was the last time you went to a shop and paid by cheque? Well, it's probably quite a while ago, as many high street stores will no longer accept them. Well, now, banking experts are predicting that cash may be about to go the same way. But how do we pay for things like a cup of coffee if we don't have a pocketful of loose change?
Hey, what's up, my friends? Joey B here once again. I'm going to play a short video for you here to start things off, and it's from Resurrected 2011, and he's basically letting everyone know that the National Defense Authorization Act has been passed. So I'm going to play this video for you, but before I do, I want to remind you, I showed you all the MTV martial law commercials, you know, where the military's rounding people up off trains and right from their houses and whatnot. And, you know, obviously the legislation talks about any anti-government organizations, okay? And you can look it up that Occupy Wall Street protesters are basically officially classified as terrorists, along with Al-Qaeda, basically. So that's pretty remarkable stuff. I'm going to go ahead and play this video for you. And then I got an article I want to show you, and I'll finish it off with another video. So we'll start off on this one here. And this is an article here from Press TV, and the title reads, Paul, Obama gunning for martial law. U.S. Republican presidential hopeful Ron Paul has accused the U.S. President Barack Obama of pushing for institutionalization of martial law in the country.
The elites have said that they want to have a final revolution, that they know the public's going to revolt against them, so that's why they've scientifically set up the surveillance grid, the cashless society. This whole continuity of government system is designed to suppress and control the people of America.
My name is Sam Ozaki. I'm a native-born American citizen, Los Angeles, California. When Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066, we were all rounded up like cattle and placed into America's concentration camps.
In May 2007, President Bush signed a National Security Presidential Directive 51.
Most Americans would agree that it would be prudent to have a plan to provide for the continuity of government. They have such a plan. They introduced a little sketchy public version that's clearly inadequate, but they said, don't worry, there's a detailed classified version.
Army Regulation 210-35. Now, this was set up in 1986 secretly, and for 10-plus years it was secret. And in 1997, Bill Clinton declassified this, and we were the first major radio show to cover it. Since then, it's been expanded. This lists 12 camps to hold American citizens that have been built by the United States Army.
Beginning in October, the Army plans to station an active unit inside the United States.
Under Northcom and under the new Homeland Brigade, it was first going to be 3,000, and then 20,000, and then 40,000.
The 3rd Infantry Division's 1st Brigade Combat Team has spent 35 of the last 60 months in Iraq.
Combat-hardened troops who've been running camps and centers in Iraq are now coming back to the United States to, quote, carry out law enforcement actions.
The Army unit may be called upon to help with civil unrest and crowd control.
The primary purpose of this force is to provide help to people in need in the aftermath of a WMD-like event in the homeland.
Why is the media on one hand saying there are no FEMA camps, but on the other hand, legislation has been introduced to build them? Here's H.R. 645 legalizing what has already been developed, what's already been paid for by FEMA.
The government doesn't build things that are not needed or that there aren't contingency plans that say there's a reason for them. These are the kinds of camps that could be used for political dissidents, just like occurred in Nazi Germany. I think the government's anticipating that there's going to be a increased reaction against the economic downturn.
All of our rights are predicated on a free America. And if we don't have a free America, all of the other questions become moot.
Don't these companies have a responsibility morally if they're in there building camps and building shackles and building barbed wire facing in to speak out?
I talked to the Department of Homeland Security spokespeople, and they affirmed the contract with this KBR, the former Halliburton company, was in place. The Department of Homeland Security was ready to build these contingency as needed detention centers anywhere in the country in the event of any kind of a national emergency, including natural disasters or, again, riots or protests.
The real terrorists are the people that have hijacked our nation that would dare say the First Amendment is terrorism.
Okay, guys, just a quick reminder here of the urban corridor system to protect biodiversity that was discussed at the Bilderberg meetings, and all the red areas are to have little or no human use, okay? Excuse me. And all the black areas are where there will be cities of 10,000 people. So you can see where they're all situated. Now I'm going to pause it and scroll over so you can get a look at the entire map, and I'll get some of the bottom down here for you. The green will be normal use zones of cooperation. The orange will be Border 21, agreement of NAFTA, 124-mile-wide intercontinental zone of cooperation. The pink will be Indian reservations, so you could see some pink and where those would be. And I told you about the cities and everything else. So I'll get on here. I wanted to also show you the FEMA regions. And if you can recall, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10.